Welcome to the fifth episode of the City Zen Pod with Griffin Beck of Agrivert Farms. I hope you guys enjoy our conversation as we talk about urban agriculture and other sustainability issues. I was trying out Google Meets for the first time in this video. To be honest, don't recommend. We had a lot of technical problems while we were doing the video, but the audio should still be good so you can hear along with our conversation. Thank you and enjoy. All right, so we got Griffin Beck here today. Where are you from, Griffin? Who are you?
Yeah, so I'm Griffin. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I've grown up here, lived here my whole life. Went to Butler University here in Indianapolis. Yeah, as much as I love the city, I do want to get out eventually, but it's been awesome, and I love the city.
Yeah, I do love Indy too. As I just told you, I'm out of Indy right now in Winston-Salem doing school, but I don't
Yeah,
know, once I got away, I was like, I do miss it. It's a little quirky, it's a little
yeah,
bland, but I do love the people, and one of the things we'll talk about today, I love the food of Indianapolis for sure.
yeah. It's got a good
Um,
diversity of food, but
yeah. You were a business student at Butler, right?
yep, yeah. So I double majored in finance with a secondary major in entrepreneurship, and the entrepreneurship major, well, not on my degree, it doesn't say it. It kind of had a focus in hydroponics and like urban agriculture. So every class that I would take, I'd always do something revolved around that. Whether like if the class was like social entrepreneurship, I would do like a non-for-profit in hydroponics or urban ag, or just whatever the class was. I try and design it around something in ag tech.
No, that's cool. I was interested to see like how you got into agriculture. I remember the first time I heard, and I was like, "What? There's a business kid that wants to go into agriculture? What is this?"
Yeah, they had me do there was some food presentation towards the end of senior year, and I was the only business student they could find that was into food at all, and so I had to do just like make a presentation within like a day, just because they didn't even realize there was like a business representative, I guess, for the school. But no, I got into it in high school. Um, I went out to my sister lived in New York at the time. She's 10 years older than I am, so I went out to visit her. And I just remember I lived there. I was with her for like 2 weeks or so. So we went grocery shopping and everything. And it's a whole process. The groceries are far away.
Mhm.
It was a nightmare. And I was like, I don't know, I was a complete nerd in high school. I still am now, but it was even worse in high school. And so I went home and I was like, I had a school project that I got to pick my own topic on. I was like, why don't we just grow like a skyscraper of food in the middle of downtown New York? And so I looked it up, and there's actually a guy from Columbia University talking about doing that exact thing with hydroponics. And then I did my school like research thing on hydroponics, and then it kind of just snowballed from there.
That's
So
like,
yeah,
mm. It's
where's
interesting to hear everybody's stories, how they got into food and stuff. Mine
yeah,
mine's a little more boring. It was just I've always been into it as a kid. I made a garden for my mom when I was younger, and I
nice.
just kind of always liked to using old pallets and stuff to build raised beds. Like
Oh yeah,
I don't know, it's easy work, and well, it's not easy, but it's
yeah,
something
but
you could
that's fun.
definitely
Yeah, that's
do
fun
in your
using
free
your
time.
hands and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's something I really miss because when I was at Butler, I worked at the farm with cues for like I think it was 4 semesters, and like I'm like out of shape now, and like just missing being outside.
Yeah,
Especially I'm
yeah,
in business school now. It's like all I'm doing really is looking at screens and sitting in a chair. So it gets to me, but I'll have
yeah,
time to do that in my free time when I get back, I think.
yeah, for sure. Being out in the sun is the best part for
Hmm.
me, at least.
And then what other things do you like to do?
Yeah, so I've been in rock climbing a ton. So growing up, I did tennis all through my life. So I've always been into like sports and like doing stuff. So rock climbing is the new thing that I've gotten into, and I've been doing it like pretty much every day for the past year. I just do bouldering. So for people that don't know, JP, you definitely know, but anyone else listening, the bouldering is just like it's probably like a 20-foot wall. There's no ropes or anything. So if you fall, there's just like a crash pad, like a big mattress essentially that you fall on. And yeah, it's a good workout. It gets you going, but it's not killer. It's also not great cardio, so I probably need to run more. But yeah, I've been big into rock climbing, and then behind that, I've been getting into cars a little bit more, trying to
Okay.
learn. I need to get a new car because my car is a piece of crap. But yeah, we gotta
Yeah.
get some money first before that. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit of a car guy myself. I've had 2 Subarus and a couple other cars. I'm in a Tacoma now, but
okay,
I'm enjoying it.
nice.
And also, well, more on rock climbing. Bouldering is kind of like the for if people don't know. It's like the powerful aspect, the sprints.
Yep.
I'm a rope climber myself. I enjoy the bouldering because it helps your technique a whole bunch. But I like the endurance aspect of ropes, and like I want to go climb the Tetons or something one day.
Yeah.
It's just way different than bouldering.
Yeah, it's way I can't the endurance part for me kills me. I went doing a ropes thing, not too long ago, and yeah, I got halfway up the wall and I was already my fingers were dead.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I
It's
need to
hard.
mix
You can't do nearly as much for sure.
no, no.
So, how would you get? You said like you had the idea of the skyscraper in New York, but like, what made you make the decision to get Agrivert going?
Yeah, so to get Agrivert going, so in college, I kind of just messed around with different ideas that I had, went to professors. Like I said, some of those classes that I took, I would do some of the ideas and just to see like how it would work, would it even be possible, just learn as much as I could. And then towards the end of my senior year, Butler requires us to do 2 internships in the business school. So one of my internships was like some financial planning thing. It was like a 9 to 5 type job. Sat behind a computer, hated it, so I knew I didn't want to do that route. My second internship, I went to one of my favorite professors, and who is my advisor, who was my advisor. And I was just like, "Is there any way I could like start my own business as an internship to get it out of the way?" And I'd rather do that than work anything else.
Yeah,
So he said, "Yeah, it's possible. We just have to get everything approved and sponsored and all that," which Butler made a nightmare, but that's another story. So eventually, once I got approved, it was just like trial and error for like 6 months just to see like what even Agrivert would become, like what I could sell, how banking stuff works, how the money works, how everything kind of works. Like the business school teaches you a lot of great things, but actually doing it is a whole nother like deal.
mhm.
And so actually doing it at the end of my senior year was really nice. So now that I'm out on my own, kind of doing it, and I still have support through Butler and other people, but being on my own more, I feel more comfortable because I've been in it for a few months at least, rather than jumping into it right now.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. They like allowed you to have the opportunity. Like, I'm sure starting a business under like guidance is a little easier than just doing it all on your own.
It was so much better. Plus, just having like it was Professor Feder is my like the guy who helped me, and he I mean he like kind of threw me to the wolves at points too. Like there was days where he like well there was a week where he wanted me to learn how like rejection felt, so he sent me to banks with like a business plan. He's like, "You're gonna get rejected, but like you need to learn how to
Yeah,
talk to them and how to get money." So he came with me and we just like sat through some meetings where basically the dude was like, "Yeah, I'm not giving you any money. Like get out of my chair." So it's a good time. I definitely learned a lot, but it was nice to have him kind of like pretty much hold my hand through the whole thing, at least in the beginning,
yeah,
and slowly back off. But yeah, it was cool.
yeah. Is that how you got started, like money wise, then with loans from banks?
No, so I got no money from any of them. I told them
Okay.
no, pretty much.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then graduating or like all through the rest of the year, it was pretty much just like small stuff I was doing, a lot of projections. I wasn't really selling anything yet, making any revenue. But when I graduated, I had a whole plan laid out. Like I had a million ideas that had been canceled out, and I had a few good ideas left. So it was kind of like time to get going. So I got a full time job working, and then any extra money from that I saved up and then reinvested into Agrivert. Then on top of that, the easiest way that me and Feder, Dr. Feder, kind of like came up with is to sell something rather than creating some whole new software or designing a whole farm or something like that. It costs a lot of money. Um, and so I ended up selling like, and I still sell them, but I closed down the website a few weeks ago because I'm kind of moving into some other projects.
Mhm.
I was selling like a little appliance. It was $100 for your kitchen, and it had 10 spots for you to grow 10 different types of leafy greens, herbs, small fruits, some stuff like that. So it was a hydroponic, like it used hydroponics as the science behind it to grow any kind of plants you wanted. So I sold some of those, and now I'm using that money that I got from that. I'm going to do microgreens is the next little thing that I want to try out and see how that goes. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how the money is. It's tight, but I don't need much for what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and it's all about developing the network and stuff
Oh
too.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
having customers and people just knowing that the work that you're doing and you're passionate about means a lot more than making money most of the time. So
exactly.
I
And the
wish it.
nice thing about Indy too is there's a big foodie culture here that I didn't know about. And kind of
Mhm.
talking to a lot of these people, and a lot of like the people that wanted to buy from me are in that kind of culture. It's a very close knit network. So like the people that I've started meeting, like they know everybody in the city that does anything to do with ag tech. especially urban stuff. So it's been nice being like
Yeah.
so well connected now.
Yeah, it's not like a common topic, or people don't think it's a common topic. But if you meet the right person, they're gonna introduce you to 100 more people that are doing the same thing. But
Exactly.
it's hard to find them.
Yep.
All right. Um. So let's move on. And like, if anybody here listens to me regularly, I usually just kind of like, I do make like a story arc of how I want the meeting to go and everything. But I've come up with, I've wanted to be doing this strategy, but this is finally a topic where I can practice it, I guess. But I want to like follow sustainability. And have you heard of like the three pillars of sustainability?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I want to structure things from now on. Like, think of things from that lens. First off, I wanted to hear like, what's your definition of sustainability,
Okay.
or
My
what would you
definition.
think about it?
Yeah, my definition of sustainability, or I guess it kind of like my look on it, is just balance is the best word I would use. Just everything's kind of in balance. I mean, obviously there's going to be ups and downs as there always is with anything, but like if we're just mining coal out of the earth forever, there's no balance there, right? There's no give or take. And obviously, I mean, there's it takes forever to coal come back, so that's just a bad example. But yeah, I mean, just for me, it's just keeping things in balance, not just destroying a whole forest, um, not just letting a forest destroy us either. Not just letting it take over our cities. We got to keep it tamed at least. But yeah, just kind of playing with nature rather than playing against it.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna do that on all my episodes. Ask everybody what their definition is, because there is no like, there is. I'm gonna read it in a second, but like
Yeah,
everybody always fights over what the definition of sustainability is, because
yeah,
it's not like a uniform topic yet. But from the Oxford Dictionary, it's the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level. And
okay,
then I put it as a balanced interaction between the physical world, which is coal's a good example. It's not balanced. There's a lot of take and there is give, but the ratio is a little off.
yes,
A
yeah.
little off for sure. Have you ever heard like people talk negatively about sustainability, like especially as an undergrad in business school? Like, what was the vibe of students around sustainability?
Um, there wasn't much talk of it in general in the business school. It's not something that's really given much thought. Mostly because in business school the goal is to teach you how to make money or to how to make your business money, how to sell. It's not really taught how to make less money and keep things sustainable. That's not really good business in most people's eyes. However, I think that's starting to shift a little bit. Um, but I think in general, and like kind of in the US, or I guess you could say the world too, although I don't know as well, for the world, it's negative in the sense that they can always find something bad with it. So, like for example, electric cars, there's the lithium issue with digging up so much lithium. I mean, and then you go like organic food. There's the issue of we can't feed everyone, or maybe it's just, there's always an issue with it, no matter what. People always find a loophole to say that it's not good, which is where that balance kind of comes into play. There's never really going to be a solution that's perfect, and that's not just for sustainability. That's for everything. I think there's never a perfect solution. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's definitely some negative connotation around it for sure.
Yeah, I think that's why urban agriculture is such an attractive idea to a lot of people, because it's not saying there's one solution. It's saying you have a space that you can utilize to grow food
Yeah,
and do that how you see fit. But each community has different needs. And it's hard for people to say like if there's not one solution that they should follow it. But like it's about finding that solution for yourself. For me, at least.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and then we kind of already talked about it. I was going to ask why is sustainability important, but we've already talked about it. It's about the balance. If you're taking stuff out too much, like eventually you're going to run out.
Yeah,
We follow the market and put a lot of faith in the market, and always say we have the market is going to find
right.
solutions. But if the market isn't like, if that's not a priority of the market, yeah, you don't know how that's actually going to go. But
Yeah.
it's only so much faith.
I'll also add too that I always hear people talking about how much they want to travel and like see the world. Um, but then if you're not taking care of it, you're not going to see anything. There's not going to be anything left to see.
Hmm.
Which is something I always think's like weird whenever I hear people talking about like, oh, I want to go see the Great Barrier Reef, or I want to go check out this tropical rainforest. I want to go to Bali and see the monkeys in the islands, whatever it is. Um, if you're not like at least doing a little something to try and keep sustainability around. There's not going to be much left for people to go see.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's something that globalization has kind of messed things up with. Like, yeah, everybody does have the right to go travel and stuff, but like
right,
travel has a huge impact on the environment as well. I struggle
exactly.
with that myself because like I was an environmental studies student. I know exactly how much carbon is being emitted when I fly, but it's like I'm not gonna take that experience away from me because traveling is, I think, the best way to get cultured. But
Mhm.
I will be at ease when I'm sitting on a plane and not having to worry about its emissions someday. That'd be nice.
That's the life right there.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the two loops theory of change by chance?
I know a little bit of it,
Yeah.
but nah, you'll definitely know more than I would with it.
I did geek out about it when I was in undergrad for sure. I just wanted to share this graphic of it real quick. Just I'm sure a lot of people have not seen it. I haven't used the share feature on Google Meets before. Can you see this? Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I can see it.
Cool. So this is kind of like a diagram of what it looks like, and I think it's important. I can't like actually point at it. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah, I can see the mouse.
Okay. Um, it's just saying like there's this dominant system that's over on the left side of it over here. That's any system's broad. You can apply it however you'd like to, but say we're talking about farming today. This is like industrial farming, and then you have the pioneers or people that came like before Griffin, before you, people that started doing urban ag and starting to think of how to do farming other than on hundreds of thousands of acres with big machines, putting a whole bunch of fertilizer on it and stuff. People
Mhm,
wanted to find a solution. And then where Griffin is like this hospice worker spot, like the people that are mending to and still participating new growth of that new system, and then all these people come together with their networks and they connect and they start thinking of new ideas, better solutions for common problems, and then eventually those networks do grow into larger and larger circles where there's less ambiguity in between how practices work and everybody's working a little bit better together. But then amongst this there's like the death of this old system
mhm,
and you have the new emerged. And then there's this transition spot here, and this is the part that like as humans we really struggle to visualize. Like, how do we go from doing this thing that we've always done in a certain way to something completely new? Like
mhm,
we can't visualize it until it happens. That happens with every paradigm. Like when we find out that some theory in science that we've believed for hundreds of years is wrong, like it's well, we've been operating under the past pretext that it was correct. So how do we now correct that assumption and make it different? Um, but I just like showing this to people because this is how I kind of think about what jobs are, what are they doing for the world, how do they interact with one another, and I don't know. It just helps me at least understand like that there is hope, and like every person does have their role in society. Even up here is the stabilizers. Not every single wealthy person is a stabilizer, but this is those people that invest into that new market. Um, like maybe a hedge fund or a private equity firm that's not only worried about oil and housing, but also has like some renewable energy investments in their portfolio. That's what that role kind of is. And then there's also, I guess, this is where I kind of see myself now is the system of influence. This is where the illuminators travel.
okay,
Um, these are people that just talk about it and like let other people know about it, and like they're still kind of like the pioneer and the hospital worker at the same time, but they're doing more like the social media communication, flyers, just being an advocate, I guess. Uh,
gotcha.
I just wanted to preface that. How do I stop presenting? There we go.
There you go, you got it.
um, and then the question that like stems from this that I wanted to ask you is like in your mind, where does creativity come from?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it comes from a lot of experience, like experiences that you have. Um, so the more you get out, the more you do things, the more things you see, the more things you watch, listen to. It just gives ideas. At least for me, like this, like I had just got started getting into journaling because I just have ideas pop in my head sometimes, and either I spend all day just trying to remember the idea, or it just pops back out and I forget it. So I've started journaling a little bit, which has really helped. And it's kind of weird where creativity comes from. I think it's different for a lot of people. My mom was an artist and my dad's a musician, so they both have like their own methods of how they go about it. Like for my dad, he needs to be like in a setting of like songs, like he has to be around his equipment. For my mom, it's the opposite. She kind of needs to like escape from things and get away from people, and then she can kind of do her art. Um, for me, it's just like random moments throughout the day. If I see something and I link it to something else that I've already thought of, or like something else in my brain, an idea will pop, and that's why I kind of journal now. I always carry it in my backpack, which goes everywhere with me now. So yeah, I think it stems from a lot of different places for people, and then how to activate it is another tricky part too. Which I don't know how you activate your creativity, but I still have not figured out how to like turn mine on and off.
I'm one of those people where it's kind of never off, which can be harmful as well, because you're
Yeah.
always looking at things from different perspectives and not like trying to fit in, I guess.
Mm.
But um, I don't know. I enjoy creativity. I don't really like draw per se. I always say that like my creativity is more in like language. And I
Right.
don't write as much as I used to, but I like, just when talking to people or like when I'm working on projects, thinking about like which words are the most impactful in my presentation and things, like I really enjoy that part of creativity because it's painting a picture. You're planting a seed in somebody's brain.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Um,
Right. Do you when you I'll ask this question. I always ask this when
yeah.
people talk about creativity. When you get an idea, like, do you have to act on it quickly, or can you hold on to it and like 2 months down the road do something with it?
Yeah. So a lot of the time I try to act on it quickly because I can get like I'll forget like my short-term thoughts a lot.
Mhm.
You can't see it, but my room's actually covered in post-it notes. Like
Right.
and they're not organized very well, but like if there's something that I was like when I'm doing this in 2 months I should think about this. I'll like look for that on my wall and then it'll get me like jump started on it. 'Cause I have so many thoughts. Like there's 4 or 5 different pads of Post-it notes just laying around me, and
Sweet.
half of them don't ever get used, but writing
Yeah.
it down and, like, putting it somewhere does help me organize things a lot.
Okay. Sweet.
Mm. How about you? Can you hold on to it?
Yeah, that's why the journal is helpful.
Yeah.
A lot of the idea, like the microgreens thing in the winter, and then I put that idea together with like someone else was talking about using door stickers as marketing because it's really cheap. So I'm like putting those two ideas together and a few other like a subscription model and a website thing that I used to use for another business in college. And yeah, so like the journal is just nice now because I can write down like different lists of things and I can draw and just go crazy and do whatever I want in a journal rather than it all being in my head. At least I can see it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna try to refresh this page real quick. I'm assuming the call won't drop or anything, but, like, it's lagging.
yeah,
Alright.
good,
Yeah. Yeah.
sweet.
Technology, man.
Here we
Speaking
go.
of creativity and holding on to ideas, um, the metaverse has like opened up so many possibilities, even though they lost what $600 million or whatever that was.
Yeah,
Um, I do like one of the things I have written on my wall is like if that ever does pop off and like I'm still doing podcasting to make like a live online meeting space where like you'd have a live audience, but like just in like you and I would be talking to it, but everybody else could see
monitors like
us.
a headset and can like yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Be
It'd be a cool way to bring people together, but I don't know. It seems like that world has a little bit of pushback from society right now. I don't know how big it's going to take off.
Yeah, it might come around, but
Hmm.
something's weird with it.
Well, I was looking into it a little bit because I want to talk about this as well. But I actually accepted a job offer in real estate. But I was looking at like the real estate of the metaverse and digital real estate, and they have a really big problem because there's no scarcity. So like, there's not value of real estate. Like you have to buy it, but like the value just goes down when you buy it because they just build more.
Right.
It's kind of an imperfect market at the moment, but hopefully they'll fix something, do something cool with it.
Is it lagging on your end a little bit again?
Yeah, the video is, but I can see you and I can hear you,
All
so
right, good.
it'll be all right.
That's fine.
Um, all right. So our first pillar of sustainability is the environment. And I just won't share my screen the rest of the time. that was making it worse. But uh, in your mind, why is the environment important?
I would say the environment is important because I mean it's essentially how we stay alive. I mean, it's how farming works. Farmers work with the environment around them. They work with the soil they're given, with the temperature, the weather. I mean, I've talked to a few like traditional style farmers that, I mean, they say a lot of it's just luck. You have to get lucky with certain winds shifting, certain rainfalls. Um, you hope that a crop doesn't get a disease. And there's a lot that they go into with the environment. So, especially when it comes to ag tech, that's one of the big things that they're trying to almost control. There's something called controlled environment agriculture,
Hmm.
um, which is pretty big in ag tech now. It's what I'm extremely interested in and like want to get into soon. The tough part is the money to get into it's really high because you have to build a building or buy a building, lease, rent, whatever the case may be, completely rebuild it out. You control all the humidity, the temperature, um, and then you control what the plants get, nutrients, and I mean they are essentially playing God with this. I mean they're controlling how the plants grow, when they grow, how they taste, look, everything. So with the environment, I mean it's super key. It's super important because without it, we don't live, we don't grow food, we don't survive.
Yep. Yep. Those things have been super interesting. My favorite part about them is like you mitigate food waste so much. Like you're not having to leave crops on the field if the market price isn't right or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, they're very more so efficient. Oh, I was gonna share my screen showing this. I'll try to just put this post-it note up here. This is sustainability via concentric circles,
Yep.
and like how why I think the environment is like the most important. Like the it's the outside concentric circle, and then like our society and our economy is just derived from it. So like it's the building block to all things that we do and everything. And yeah, playing God with controlling stuff isn't the it can be scary, but I think when it comes to food production, it's a necessary evil, if it's an evil at all.
No, I completely agree. I think it's good.
Yeah. It doesn't address like one of the main things of like the environment and the problems that we face, which is like biodiversity,
Yeah.
because you're not building stuff inside, you're not helping pollinators or anything doing it, but you are increasing food production. Um,
The nice thing I like about it though, with the controlled environment, is it allows us, or at least the hope is that it will allow us to leave like natural environments untouched. Like
mhm,
for example, in Brazil, like they're just slowly going more and more into the rainforest, tearing it down, destroying it. So like I would wish that they would rather than trying to grow more crops there, because the soil is horrible, like where they're at,
mhm,
that they would do controlled environment agriculture and do a lot more hydroponic stuff. That way they can leave the rainforest, let it be its own natural habitat, and grow
mhm,
the food that we need, like a controlled area away from that, and leave that biodiversity untouched.
yeah.
But
I know a lot of the Amazon's used for like livestock though, so like
mhm,
obviously it will help a lot because you won't have to be growing as much wheat or whatever you are feeding those cows or whatever you're raising.
right,
But that's another huge aspect because I think it's like a third of all habitable land in the world is used for like raising crops.
yeah,
But then it's not a whole another third, but it's over half of all habitable land is used for agriculture at all. So then you're getting what, like 17% of it's for livestock, if those numbers are right. But there's still a lot that goes towards that. I eat meat now. I tried to be vegetarian for a while, but if you don't have like the financial means to do so, you're just eating like cheese and bread, and you're getting
exactly,
fat.
yeah,
Like nothing's helping there. And those concentric circles and like my definition of sustainability that I mentioned earlier, like I think it's important to see what we do and how we interact with the world as like different types of technologies. One of my favorite seminars that I had to go to at undergrad or got to participate in was speaking about how cities are a piece of technology. And we don't think about them like that. We think of them as an environment, like the environment where humans live. But in reality, there's something that we've created to survive with dense populations very efficiently, I might add.
Right.
It's like the majority of the people in the world live in cities, but then only 3% of our land is used for cities. So that just tells you that they're very, very, very efficient.
Exactly.
Um, uh, I used to always want to be like a rural guy, but I definitely want to live in Indy now, or for the time being at least.
Yeah. No, I'm ready to go more rural. I wouldn't mind living in a big city in a few different countries for a little while, but I would much prefer to be in a rural area.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe not to where I don't have like communication with people, but definitely where I'm away from a city.
Yeah. I think
Um,
when if I'm ever a grandpa or anything, that's where I want to live,
oh yeah,
remote in the middle of nowhere.
there you go.
But before that, nah. What do you know about the tragedy of the commons?
I know what I learned in high school.
Hey, that's a young age to get
Yeah.
included into tragedy of commons.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much just know that it's like a depletion of resources, and that if everyone has access to something, people are going to have their own self interest. They're just going to keep taking and taking and taking, and
Mhm,
eventually it'll run out, or something will go wrong, or something will happen that's not good for whatever environment they're in. But
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, it's great that you learned it in high school because, like, I remember asking my friend one day, like, what could you or if you could do anything, there's no restraints on it, how would you um, fix wealth inequality. And what he said was like, give everybody the same amount of land and money, and then everybody like starts off fresh. I was like, okay, that's a great idea, but that is how the world started. Like
yeah,
everybody had the same access to everything, but then like one day your neighbor is going to decide that they're going to use their assets in a more productive way than you are,
yeah,
and then they're going to have more wealth than you, and then their kids are going to have more wealth than you. So like it, it's not really how do we like split it up so everybody can be equal. It's how do we better serve everybody with that distribution because you're always going to have poor people. You're always going to have people that have less assets.
right,
um, there's no getting around that because people come from other countries to this country with no family here, and like they're not going to start off as a CEO at Twitter. Like
right, yeah.
that's just not going to happen.
I'll build it up.
Yeah, you have to build it, which is weird and whatever. But the next pillar in sustainability is social. I'm going inward from the environment.
Right.
In your mind, what is a healthy population? Like what makes the human race healthy?
Yeah. So I've heard arguments for both sides of this, of there already being overcrowding and there already being underpopulation issues. I think even Elon spoke on this and said that there was an underpopulation issue, which was a weird take you don't usually hear, especially in today's world. Um, but personally, I think where we are now um, is pretty good. Honestly, I think we have a bit of an overpopulation issue. I think we should tone it back just a little bit, because as these cities continue to grow, more and more people are going to want to get like move to rural areas. And there might be a mass kind of not exodus, but people want to leave from cities and start growing out again. Um, so it's always going to be a fight for land. People are always going to want their own space. Um, and yeah, I think there's a little bit of an overpopulation issue right now in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's I don't want to get like into any big topics or anything, but I think when you look at like the current state of population and cities and poverty and like the current move to like try to ban abortion again, like it's like
Mhm.
it's that's an odd take in the current state that we're moving towards because
Right.
you're just putting in more impoverished bodies into the world in a lot of places, and that I don't know. Like we said, not everybody can be rich, but
Yeah.
you can prevent a lot of things sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, in like in developing a healthy population, like social capital and social mobility are like really big things. And obviously, like you and I went to Butler, like that's a form of social capital that you and I like have shared together.
Yeah.
Are there any like forms of social capital that you think are like really integral to society?
I do think college is over important. I think it's stressed a little too much for what it is. Personally, if I could go back in time, I would not go.
Yeah.
Looking back, I mean, it definitely helps in some regards. Don't get me wrong, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not great. One that I would say is really important is having the ability to like try new things as a society, willing to test things out. Like for me, going rock climbing, something new. I had no idea what I was doing. I had one friend that kind of did it and got me into it, but then he didn't really go with me. He lives decently far away. Um, and so yeah, just being able to try new things, taking risks is extremely important because without the ability to take risks, we're not going anywhere. We're stuck. So yeah, that's probably my most important.
I agree partly on the college thing. I think that the education aspect of it is highly overrated.
Yeah,
I just don't think the experience and like the networks that you make is highlighted enough, I guess. 'Cause that's really what it is. Like it's why
right.
I joined a fraternity. It's why I still talk to those people. Like I love having a group of people that I can connect with and like talk about anything with.
Yeah,
And prior to coming to college, like that was a lot harder. I think it is a lot harder if you like don't have that shared experience with somebody. It's just that's really the value of college now, and I get that now going to business school. It's
yeah,
like that one, they're okay, if anybody from Wake Forest is listening, I'm sorry, but one, they're not going to fail you. Like, they need you to graduate. They need you to give them money after you graduate and become an alumni. And, like, the education there, like, it's just somebody that did something, like I love my professors, don't get me wrong, but, like, they're all like, business professors are somebody that, like, did something in the industry 20, 30 years ago, and, like, they just still talk about it. Like, because you have different things opinions within business school, so, like, there's not a truth in business school whatsoever. There's just ideas that get floated.
yeah,
It's odd.
yeah. Business school
Okay.
is a weird place.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on rules and regulations and like how they dictate our social interactions or how we live?
Yeah, this is something I've actually been given a ton of thought since I've been out of college. Because it just affects us more now. I mean, in college, you're kind of protected, obviously, in high school, and when you're under 18, you're protected by a lot of stuff. You have your parents as a fallback, and now that you're out of college, like you do something wrong, you break a rule, you break a law, like serious jail time, serious consequences could come of it. Um, and there's also a lot of control that comes from that too, from policymakers that they can kind of control where society goes, how it acts. Um, so it's a weird thing that I haven't figured out personally yet. Where the line should be drawn on what things like what laws should be made, what laws shouldn't. But it's definitely there's a lot of power in that. Um, and and then yeah, I mean I don't want to get too political or anything too, but I mean if you don't have good candidates, it's tough because you want to have good laws, you want to have good regulations. But if you feel like everything's corrupt, it's like fighting a losing battle. You're just
Yeah.
constantly trying to go uphill, constantly trying to go uphill. But yeah, it's only so much you can do if those are your only good options. You know, you only have a few choices and none of them seem good. There's
Hmm.
really nothing that you can do other than run yourself. And I mean, in today's world, you've got to have millions of dollars and supporters and everything else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Speaking of millions of dollars in supporters, this is just off the cuff. If you had a million, or if you were a millionaire and you still wanted to go into agricultural business, you said you had all these cool ideas and what you'd want to do, but like, what would you actually do? Like next week, if you had $100 million in your bank account, what would you do with it?
uh, first thing first, um, I would try and find a few good people to help me out, a few more engineer type people, because my goal would be to build. So like my big idea, like if I could do anything I wanted, would be to do like neighborhood farms essentially. So there's a company out of Boston called Freight Farms that I worked with a ton in college. They build out. They're probably the most advanced freight container farms in the world from my research that I could find. Um, and it produces a ton of food. It's as energy efficient as they can get right now. The only thing holding them back is the LED lights in the industry. Um, and it's like 3 gallons of water a day, and you can even reduce that more if you pay some more money to get some dehumidifiers and pull water out of the air. And so the goal would be to buy as many of those as I can, put them within neighborhoods, especially in food deserts and um, other areas where it's really not a lot of grocery stores and stuff, and use those as kind of farmers markets, grow what the neighborhood actually wants, And then in terms of the big box stores, have like a central warehouse to grow as much food as possible for those big box stores, whether it's Kroger, Target, anywhere else that sells a lot of food in bulk. And then use those neighborhood ones to kind of keep the population healthy, keep them eating. Maybe do giveaways if it's a really impoverished area. That way you can still eat healthy and not have to break the bank. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've done like a financial thing on like a little neighborhood here on the east side of ND, and financially, it's not making you a millionaire, but it is profitable. It's pretty thin margins, which is the big issue now because of how expensive energy is,
Yeah.
which is only going up right now, which isn't good for ag tech. But yeah, if I had $100 million, the goal would be to just build these little neighborhood pocket farms with one central big one to kind of feed the city and make the city more reliable on it, like on itself, not have to ship goods in from halfway across the world.
Yeah. And being from Indianapolis, I think we probably have like a little bit more exposure to the idea of like snaps and like how that works.
Mhm.
With they're basically like it's like a government dollar that you get, and it has like double the value in order to buy fresh produce from small local farms and stuff.
Yeah,
But then also for people that aren't from Indianapolis and aren't aware, like Indianapolis is the U.S.'s largest food desert. Or at least it was in 2018. I think I saw something recently that said it was trending upwards now, at least.
better. Yeah,
You know, but how would what's a food desert?
yeah. So food desert is an area where either there's not. I think it's. I don't know what the mileage is, but it's a certain distance away from a grocery store.
I think it's
Um,
5 miles.
is it 5 miles? Yeah. So if you're not able to essentially walk to a grocery store in a certain amount of time, then you're living in a food desert, which for some people may not seem like a big deal because they might just grab food from work. They might drive past the grocery store if their work's 20 minutes away. But in more impoverished areas, it's a pretty important deal because a lot of them they work near where they live. They may not work much at all for multiple reasons. And if you're in a food desert, it's tough to get fresh food, especially. Um, of course, there might be a McDonald's down the road, but that's really not great
Yeah,
for you every single day. So it's really areas where there's not good fresh food. Um, but the definition I think is like you said, 5 miles from a grocery.
yeah, yeah, and those are just like a big deal because like that, as we see, like there's obesity problems, diabetes, and a lot of that isn't stemmed from eating like just sweets. It's just like not eating calorically dense food that's actually beneficial. Like,
Yeah,
I remember there was something that we read. I want to talk about it later. The Green Revolution, but like after that happened in Mexico, um, I forget there was some like deal that we brokered with them to like give them more corn and wheat that we were growing from our sustainable or not sustainable, very productive practices.
yeah,
And this essentially like introduced like sugary cereals and other processed goods to Mexico for the first time. And like
yeah,
they saw their diabetes just skyrocket because of that. Because they were just wondering like, what's the cheapest thing I could eat? They weren't worrying about like the nutritional value of it or anything.
yeah.
It's tough. All right, on to the third pillar of sustainability, economics, or the economy. Have you heard much about like? I haven't heard much recently, but I remember a while ago listening to stuff about it. But like, how it's important to divest away from fossil fuels, and like, what does that mean?
I haven't heard much about it in
Okay.
general. I mean, just hearing like you say it, the first thing that pops in my head is getting away from them and moving to renewables.
Mhm.
Um, but I've also heard like Elon talk about like if he had a big red button to just turn off coal, like fossil fuels in general, he wouldn't push it. Um, and he goes on to explain that because of how like dependent we are on them, and even the services like of renewable energies, like we need those non-renewables to build the renewable energy sources. The
Mhm.
factories run on it, and all of this other sort complex systems. So yeah, I mean, we definitely need to slowly transition to renewables, but it is a race against the clock, and we have to be careful that we're kind of stay in a sweet spot, I guess, of
Yep.
how much we use and how much we don't use.
Yeah. I think that was pretty well put for sure. Yeah, I think about when I think about like the divestments away from fossil fuels, I'm thinking about like large companies like financial services or hedge funds that like a big chunk of their returns comes from investing in fossil fuels, and it's hard to get those people to invest in something else and not perpetuate that market. But like they also do need to invest in it because you're right, like we do have to still produce fossil fuels in order to build renewable energy. I was actually really fortunate enough a couple weeks ago we had like a business case competition where
Mhm.
me and my team, we worked with, I don't think I had to sign an NDA when I came here. I don't think any of this stuff goes into that, so let's hope. But we worked with a company called Jack Henry, which is like a really large financial service provider, and they've been having like not as many people come back to their offices as they had expected, and then they're just like letting people work from home.
Right.
Um, but then they came to us like with the problem of their sustainability and their emissions, and our team we won the competition. It was cool, but our recommendation, thank you, thank you. Our recommendation was for them to. We had to estimate everything. We didn't get a lot of information from them, so we had to like just guess stuff and from information that we did have. But we recommended that they close like half of their offices and go to like hybrid work style, and
Mhm.
then they would have saved by selling off just the buildings that they owned, not even taking into consideration what they would save from leases. They'd make like $15 million, and then we recommended that the first part of it, my one of my colleagues came up with, or he found this thing called an SDP. It's like this computer that goes onto a building's energy infrastructure and just allocates it like way more efficiently.
Mm.
So they love that idea. But then my part of it that I was really proud of, which goes to renewable energy, I recommended because their headquarters is in Missouri and they're all about like giving back to their community and things. And Missouri has a whole bunch of farms there, like tons.
Yeah.
So I recommended they utilize those relationships and invest in. Do you know what an anaerobic digester is?
Not really.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yep.
Um, so since they have a whole bunch of CAFOs there, what this anaerobic digester does, it takes the manure and other waste from these CAFOs, either chicken, pig, or cow, and it goes into this anaerobic digester where it takes the excess methane from it and turns it into energy. But they'd like their idea, and I'm still waiting to hear if they're actually going to do it or not. But I'm hoping they do. I would love to have that like credibility, I guess, going forward. But that's another big thing that people don't think about because we don't like thinking about poop.
Yeah.
But you can use it to make like a whole bunch of energy, and it also saves the farmer a whole bunch of money because they're not having to use as much nitrogen and stuff on the crops or whatever because there's not as much manure going into the water and degrading the land. It's a
Gotcha.
win-win, but they are also very expensive.
Yeah. Huh.
Very expensive, but they
Cool.
work. Um, cool. We talked about it already a little bit, but my next topic was generational wealth.
Mhm.
Um, what's the importance of that, and like, how does somebody build it that's never had it before?
Uh, it's a good question. I mean, it's always in stages the way I look at it. Like my family growing up, we were pretty much just straight middle of the class as you could get. um, so for me, like the next step up would be like, okay, let's make a little bit more money in my family. Like my parents were not college educated. I am. So the kind of hope is that I take a step up and go make, I don't know, upper middle class level money. And let's say my kids go on to be grad school level and then PhDs after that. So that's kind of like the educational route, I guess. Another route is doing more investments. So buying real estate, holding on to it, maybe having your kids sell it and then they buy bigger real estate. I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but it's all kind of the same idea. You either have to buy something, learn something, or create something and kind of keep building it up. However, I do think there's going to be a big like wealth transfer here soon. I don't know exactly when, but with so much money tied up, like in the generations ahead of us or before us, I guess. I mean, eventually they are all going to pass away, and we'll be left with all the real estate and all the companies and everything else. Um, like for example, I see a lot of people always talking about how expensive it is to buy a house. And of course, interest rates going up are not helping that. But even before that kind of happened, it's so expensive. And that's because everyone, like all of our parents, bought all these houses, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's all going to appreciate, and I can sell it." Well, no one in our generation can buy it, so
Hmm.
eventually those prices are going to have to come back down, or wages are going to have to go to match it. And I mean, then you get into a whole bunch of different economic issues. But yeah, I think to build generational wealth, you either have to go the educational route, or you have to have some kind of plan with investments or create companies um, to kind of build that. But
Yep.
yeah, I don't know if you agree with any of that.
No, I definitely do agree. I come from like kind of the same background. Another reason, like I'm really into food. Like me and my mom used to be on food stamps. Like we had to grow and come back from that and everything. But that's why I want to build generational wealth myself. Is like I want my children, if I have children. I'm not too keen on that at the moment. Um, but just to have like a safety net, like you don't have to worry about having a paycheck, like because that just frees up so much of your mental energy. Like you're
Mhm.
able to do things so differently if you're not worrying about where your next meal is coming from. You're able to operate on a way different level. That's something I'd like to do for sure.
Yeah. No, and the interesting thing too, I've started to see more wealthy people talk about is how they don't want to give their money to their kids. They
Hmm.
want their kids to kind of make it on their own way. And I mean, like Shaq has talked about this, but at the same time, those kids have so many connections through their parents being wealthy that it's almost, I mean, it's not the same as being given $1 billion, but being connected to millionaires is
No.
just as important as it is to have $1 million because those guys can teach you how to make it.
So
Um,
your network is your net worth,
exactly.
as I've heard recently.
Yeah.
Well, that's so true. Like thing I wish I could have done in undergrad is like I don't know, taken a couple business classes and understood the importance of networking like that in a business environment at least. Like I didn't have LinkedIn in undergrad. But now I have it. And it's like the world's endless on there. You can talk to almost like anybody you want. Like they have to
Yeah.
reply, but like you can reach out to anybody. It's kind of
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah. We already talked about resource extraction, so I'm gonna skip over that a little bit. But while we're talking about economics and we talked about generational wealth, I just wanted to talk about what I'll be doing after I graduate.
Yeah.
So I accepted a job offer at New Western Real Estate in Indianapolis. They just opened up an office there, but I'll be
Okay.
doing real estate acquisitions in Indy. I'm really looking forward to it. It's an odd time in the housing market for sure. But I think being with a large firm that has backing from investors will definitely give me the opportunity to do what I need to. But that's what I want to do like long term is like obviously urban agriculture, but I want to pair that with sustainable slash affordable housing where houses are completely independent, like energy wise, which saves the renter money,
Right.
and then like using the backyards of those properties or roofs or maybe having underground like indoor farming on them to
Yeah.
also subsidize that. Something I'd really want to, but also something that just takes tons and tons of money. And like it's not cheap to build a whole new type of house. It's
Yeah.
to market it. All right, going on to our second topic. Other than sustainability, more about what you actually do, or urban farming wise, I guess. My first question in the history of urban farming is like, or the history of farming in general, I guess. Like, how would you sum up how humans get food?
In a quick way, uh, I'll start from the beginning, which is hunter and gatherers. Um, People kind of moved around. There weren't really tribes. It was just small groups that if like deer or whatever animal they hunted were in one area, they went to that area and then followed them around
Hmm.
um, and kind of collected food as they went. Eventually, they learned how to tame those animals and also grow the crops that they were picking along the way, so they could settle down. And then from there, cities kind of grew. So then they had to learn how to kind of use technology and use animals to grow food faster, to grow it in bigger chunks of land. So that's kind of how like the traditional farms you think of or you see driving through the highways in the Midwest came about. And then now, kind of that green revolution that we touched on a little bit happened, and it really got industrialized. So big farm tech came in. The amount of people who farm dropped from, I think it was around like half the population had to farm to keep the world alive, and now it's dropped
Yep.
down to I think like 2 or 3% of the world is farmers, which really just shows how much machine power is used. And yeah, I mean that's kind of the quick sum up of how we got to where we are from picking berries.
Mhm. Like a big part of that, what you were talking about, and something we talked about earlier, like the rules and regulations. Like the government had a big piece in
Yeah,
the industrialization of farming. When you subsidize only 5 crops
right.
and you give people large loans that only have like over 100 acres or whatever, like you're just making it go in one direction. Like if it's going to be more economically efficient for me to have thousands of acres and produce food in that way, like why would I ever grow it on a small plot of land in the city? Like um, that's the bad part about all the regulations and stuff. Like sometimes they make bad decisions. Like
And I think you might know this better than me, but I think they support crops like corn and stuff because they
yeah,
can use it for fuel.
hmm
A lot of it's not supported for food, like crops that we eat, like lettuce is not supported, I don't think. A lot of the crops that are supported now, at least, are for fuel or for to feed cattle, um, rather than feed us.
yeah. I There's 5 of them. I wrote them down to remember, but it's corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, and rice.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 that you can get subsidized. There's been rules changing in the last farm bill, a little bit on that, where like smaller farms can get assistance, but then
Mm,
they're still not getting like aid for certain crops. They're ah, I think they're called like specialty crops when they're not that 5. But like
yeah.
you got lettuce, tomatoes, spinach, green beans. Like those things are also vital to our economy, and like
Yeah.
people I don't know. They only subsidize the ones that they can make other stuff out of because they wanted to make industry. They wanted to make processed foods. Like General Mills benefits heavily
Oh, yeah.
from all the governments and like Bill Gates, like how he now like just buys up farmland to grow wheat and soybeans because they make a whole bunch. He gets paid to do it essentially.
Yeah, he's
Like,
so much money, yeah.
the government messed up on that one in my mind, but
Yeah.
yeah. And then also like on the how people get their food, I think it's so interesting how we see how we're transitioning or trying to some people transition away from that industrial complex of food, and then we're just going back to the roots that we learned from the Native Americans. Like
Mhm.
we we one stole their land and then messed it all up, and now we're like, oh, let's try to go back to that. Like because a lot of the stuff that they use in urban farming is from them, like using
Yep.
small amounts of land, being as efficient as possible with it. Like I don't know why we ever switched from that. I guess we thought we had surplus, so we switched stuff up. I guess.
I think a big piece for me too in the urban farming is, like, being around nature so nice and being able to incorporate it into, like, our cities would be really cool, just to be able to see, like, the food that you're eating growing
Yeah.
right next door would just be kind of it would just kinda gives you that feel like when you look at, like, an ocean, like, you go to a beach, you just kinda feel happier, lighter on your feet. I get the same feeling, like, when I'm around like, I there's a farm here in town that I go volunteer at every now and then, and it's just nice to be around the food that I'm eating, just be around, like, green plants rather than just concrete.
Yeah. It's
So
huge. I know there's been studies on it. I don't remember any specifics, but I remember reading a couple of them, like, and talking about inner city kids that like have never literally seen an apple or a tomato. It's
mhm,
like how are you ever gonna have like a healthy vision of how you're supposed to eat if you like aren't ever introduced to those crops or
right,
foods? That's
yeah,
crazy. Uh, Jeez. Next topic goes into this a little like the surplus aspect.
mhm,
Another thing that I've always remembered from high school, like a big turning point in the world was like the specialization of labor when society decided to be more sedentary, sit down, form governments. And all the whole benefit was like we can make more things together than we can separately. And
right,
I don't know. The specialization of labor is odd. I like Karl Marx. I'm not like a Marxist through and through, but I do like him a lot. And it was like one of the things he said, like you can be a fisherman in the morning, hunter at night, and a gatherer, whatever he said. But like the
mhm,
idea of having to be able to do multiple things in a job is really attractive to me personally,
yeah,
which is why I'm taking my job. Like there's a lot of free time that I'll have, and I'll be able to use that network to do other things that I want to do.
yeah,
Um, But I do think that that has negatively impacted our society when like people have jobs where they're so alienated from like the rest of the work. I don't know if you ever had a class with Julia Angstman, but
Mm,
she always talked about her father worked in a pin factory. Like
okay.
his job was like literally just to like, oh, this one doesn't even have a spring in it. Never mind. His job was like to put the spring in the pin, and like that's all he did for like years and years. And like it's so degrading to the human soul to like
Yeah.
s- do your value is based off of one task you do. So
I think
anybody listening, I
there's a
encourage
little
you to get a job that does multiple things. But
yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
I definitely agree. I've had so many different jobs and it's so nice, but I think there's also a little give and pull in today's society, and it's almost like a push factor too. Like for me, when I had my internship, that was kind of like a 9 to 5 style in a cubicle kind of thing. The only thing I could think about sitting at that desk was how do I get out of this position in my life? Like I
Yeah.
gotta start my own company. I gotta do my own thing. Or I just gotta find some position to where I'm not sitting behind a desk from 9 to 5. Like it's torture. So as
Mhm.
much as it's horrible for people, I also think that there might be like a slow like movement towards people becoming more creative
Mhm.
and trying to start companies more, and especially in our generation with how much we just don't care about certain things and rule breaking. Um, I think there might be a lot more people trying to start businesses, doing their own thing, whether it's for
Mhm.
good or bad, I don't know yet. But I think yeah, that 9 to 5 is kind of scary to a lot of us growing up right now.
I don't know if it's like inherently scary that more people will be like starting their own businesses, but people do need to recognize like businesses don't always succeed. Like
Yeah,
you can't just like go out there and think you're gonna change the world. Like, you can do that, but like you need to understand that like there's a high likelihood you'll fail, and that will determine how you deal with that will determine your success in the future. 'Cause I hear a lot of like entrepreneurs talking on podcasts and stuff, and they're like, your first business venture will likely fail.
oh yeah,
It's how you're gonna take it to your second one, where most successful people are successful. Few people
mm,
are successful first try.
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
hard to get it right.
well, uh, back to the Green Revolution, because that is from the specialization, and it was after World War II when we really started looking at like fertilizers and stuff, because we had
Hmm.
all this new information on how chemicals worked. There was like first the guano islands that we took bird poop from to make fertilizers, and then that ran out, so we had to make it synthetically instead. And all of our bomb technology allowed us to do that. Thankfully, excuse me. And there was this guy, he won the Nobel Peace Prize, I think in 1970. His name was Norman Borlaug or Borlaug. But he was the creditor of the Green Revolution. He was a mentee of somebody. So that person that was his mentor probably has just as much credibility in this. But he was then like hired by the government after he like found how to do GMOs better, and I think it was golden rice that he was like really accredited to. I could be wrong,
Okay.
um, but then working on those and introducing them to new countries was very attractive to the United States because we were then essentially able to manage and control a country's food supply,
Hmm.
which is a very strong political stance to have.
Yeah.
And I remember like this whole like Russia Ukraine thing is crazy. Um, but something that was really interesting to me, like I was looking on Google Maps because I was interested in like the farming of the two countries.
Hmm.
And Ukraine has like the very large acres of land with tractors and things like you see in Russia. Like they're doing like urban farming. It's more subsistence farming for them because like their economy is odd.
Right.
um, but like it just shows you like it's like a visual timeline. You can see like this is the old way of farming and this is the quote unquote new way of doing it, and like what influence the United States has had over that is crazy to me. And then you have the companies like Monsanto coming out of that.
Yeah.
Um, there was the one Supreme Court case I had to read, but like they have the right to sue people if they like sell their seed out like third party, or if they well first of all their seeds are made so they don't make more seeds.
Right.
Um, odd, but even if that seed were to happen to make more seeds, it's illegal to use those seeds. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
this
There's this.
idea.
That's a
Go ahead.
company I have to get rid of.
Yeah.
immediately if I get rid of a company. There's a story of a farm using Monsanto seeds next to another farm that doesn't, and the wind was blowing seeds into the non-Monsanto farm,
Hmm.
and they like just destroyed with lawsuits that farm because the seeds had blown onto their property. And
Hmm.
yeah, they hit them with so many lawsuits they couldn't survive.
There was this other one about a farmer. He like bought a whole bunch of like secondhand seeds from a grain silo, and
Mm,
like there happened to be a whole bunch of Monsanto seeds in there. Like I don't know how they find this stuff out, but they do. Like they take their seed really seriously. But I think it's really weird that they made a natural product not able to reproduce or like do its natural job.
yeah,
You know?
there's a lot of weird stuff going on with that company.
Mm. I learned this. I took a tour of the raised trash facility in Indianapolis,
Okay.
um, and something I would have never thought of Monsanto, but most of the plastic that they recycle or gather there is
Mhm.
actually purchased by Monsanto. Um, they make carpet bottoms with it, and then they sell that.
Interesting. Didn't know they did
Yeah,
that. Huh.
I didn't either. I was just like, wow, Monsanto has their hand in something else exploitative. Cool. I wasn't surprised at all from that. But have you heard about talking about farming and pressures on farmers and stuff? Did you ever read or listen or hear anything about like the struggles that farmers have in like India and how their suicide rates are just like through the roof?
Mm-mm. No, I have not.
So in India, like the farmers don't have like any rights, and the markets are just terrible. They don't make any money. They don't have government subsidies either. So like a lot of these people that are taking out all these loans like aren't able to pay them off, and like their suicide rates amongst farmers are like 80% higher than the rest of the population suicide rates.
Jeez.
And then they're just losing all that knowledge how to like mend the land naturally because everybody's killing themselves. Like
Yeah.
nobody knows how to do it anymore.
Hmm.
So then you see big companies come in and just do it the industrial way instead.
Huh.
It's
I didn't
crazy.
know about that. That's really not good. Jeez.
Yeah. It's what they kinda did in the United States too with, CAFOs. They saw, like, farmers that were raising chickens and cows already, and then these big companies come in and offer them these contracts that make them money, but then, like, in the fine print, it's you're gonna have to reinvest 80% of this wealth into this to make it stronger again, and then they're in debt through the rest of their lives, and their kids have to pay it off too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's well, I don't think people should put their hands in our food production like that.
These not companies,
Mm,
corporations.
yeah. So I see that like what you're doing with Agrivert or trying to do is like it's contributing towards and helping like the ideas of regenerative or resilient agriculture. Is that like a goal that you had in mind with it, or is like just the food production in
Yeah,
areas?
it was one of the goals with it. The main goal when I was first looking at it was being able to feed people in cities better and just kind of making nature more a part of cities, kind of being able to see your food grown.
Hmm.
And then that resilient part kicked in pretty early on when I was doing research because I found out when about that controlled environment agriculture and just about like if you grow it indoors, you control everything that has to do with that plant. You control whether or not you put pesticides in the air and on the plant. You control exactly how much water it gets, exactly how much nitrogen and oxygen and carbon dioxide and everything else that that plant gets, and that gives the farmer complete control on how it tastes, how big it grows, how healthy the plant is. Um, and even in some systems, you can kind of control diseases by keeping different pipes and things from touching each other because the plant purely just doesn't touch other plants' root systems and it's not shared in a common soil. So, yeah, you don't have to do as many GMOs. And there is a company that sells seeds specifically for hydroponics, and there is GMO like I don't know what the word is, but like they use GMOs to kind of help those plants be better for hydroponics. But
Hmm.
that's their only real goal. They're not trying to make the plants more resilient um, to bugs or whatever the case may be or to diseases. It's really just to make it grow better in a liquid only growth uh, like plateau, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean the resilient part is really just a like a piece that just got thrown off of new ag tech because they want all this control over the food and because of that, they have to grow in these such controlled environments. It's almost like something you see in a movie. Like it's people like in hazmat suits picking strawberries off vines because it's so controlled. They don't want you breathing on it.
Hmm.
So
I didn't know
it's
it went that far.
yeah. There's a I think there's companies called Aero Farms. They're in New York or New Jersey, and
New
yeah,
York, I think. Yeah.
yeah. If you go in their warehouse, certain warehouses, you have to wear hazmat suits essentially to limit how much you interact with the plants.
Yeah. That's kind of
But
crazy.
yeah,
I didn't know the whole hazmat thing
yeah, a lot of
was a place.
robotics too. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
trippy how controlled they're getting.
I was watching a YouTube video this morning. I forget what state it was in. Might have been Boston or New York, but they
Mhm.
had like this large indoor warehouse, and they have like these little micro drones that kill any bugs that go in there. Like,
Jesus.
yeah, they train these drones with AI to kill bugs that are on the plants.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's crazy.
they really control it now. It's getting pretty, which I think is a good thing, but it is pretty trippy how sci-fi it's becoming.
Yeah. I just wanted to get it straight. I'm not against GMOs. I'm just saying that companies that like Monsanto that like take natural properties and
Yeah,
like patent them and like do stuff like that, I don't like. But GMOs are inherently like we need GMOs for
yeah,
sure. And another reason I haven't thought about it too much, but I'm sure, especially in Indianapolis, like the idea of farming indoors is really attractive because I'm not sure if you're aware, but like the lead toxins in the soil in Indianapolis are like really high. Like the soil there is still recovering from before we had unleaded fuel in
right.
vehicles. This is all around the country, but Indianapolis is inherently bad. The way our water works, all the waterways. But yeah, I didn't think about that's probably another just attractive aspect. That's another fact you might not have known. I think this
Yeah, I didn't know.
it was last time I looked, but Indiana has like the most impaired waterways of any state.
I mean, I
Um,
believe it. The White Water River, or whatever it is, the White River here is the most disgusting river I've ever seen in my life. So,
yeah, it's pretty gross. Like we have all these rivers and canals and streams, but like you're not supposed to really go in them. They're that bad.
no,
It's because of the farming too. All the farming from up north, all the nitrogen stuff gets in the water and then just goes down into the Ohio or the Wabash and joins the Mississippi and then
yeah,
out to the Gulf it goes. And this is like not on topic at all. I was going to talk about it earlier, but then, have you ever heard of a phytoplankton?
phytoplankton,
Yeah,
or plankton.
I
I
think
know
that's what they're
about
called.
plankton, but I don't know about phyto.
Yeah, I think that's what they're called. So that's another big thing with like algae blooms. It's actually like these little tiny microscopic organisms that are responsible for like the production of most of the oxygen in the ocean. So like we
Mm,
don't reap the benefits other than like them absorbing carbon. But when these big algae blooms happen down in the Gulf, these phytoplankton, their reproduction is drastically increased with nitrogen.
right.
So when they have all these things or all this nitrogen in the water, they like reproduce super fast. And then they just take up the whole surface of the water, and then oxygen can't get down to the fish. And then these things they only live for a couple days. So then they all like die at once. And they have toxins in them, so they all fall to the bottom of the ocean. And on their way down, they just kill anything in the way. And
Jeez,
that's why these dead blooms happen. But like these phytoplankton are very very sensitive organisms, but they control how oxygen circulates throughout the ocean, and nitrogen just fucks it all up.
right. Huh.
I think that might be the first time I've cursed on my podcast.
There you
Not
go.
100% sure. Let's go. um, and then also the stuff that you're doing with urban farming. I'm gonna try to go through this section quick here. But,
Mhm.
the things that they, like, help out with, what it's good for, like, it's helping with land degradation, you're not putting those toxins in the soil. It's
Yep,
good for water waste, like you said, it's more efficiently allocating water, and then you're also not tainting more water.
yep,
And then, as I mentioned earlier, like, my favorite part about it is, like, you're wasting less of the food. I think the process of making food is so, valued, that's like to waste any of it is
right.
it's kind of a sin in my heart when like I hate throwing out food, I hate not eating at all, like all that effort that went into making that food, that natural process, like coming from a seed to food, like it's a beautiful process, and like to see it wasted is it's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the ideas I have is, I'm not sure how you would do it yet, but having almost like restaurants or homes rent out spaces in these hydroponic farms,
Mhm.
and they have full control over what they grow, and almost like you work with the chefs. So you can go seasonal and have those chefs say, I want to grow romaine lettuce, basil, and edible flowers, and you grow those in a certain section. And because you can keep everything so separated and controlled, I could grow another restaurant's produce right next to them or on another level. And it would just, yeah,
Mhm.
it would save a lot of food waste rather than growing everything in bulk. I can grow on a very personal basis for whatever restaurant or people are in the area.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I remember hearing a couple farms trying to do stuff like that, not as
Mhm.
involved as that, but no, that's a great idea because then you have like you have every like plant accounted for per se. Like you're
Right.
not just growing it in hopes that you sell it. Like
Exactly.
you're taking pre-orders basically.
Yeah.
No, I'd be interested there for sure. That'd be cool. You could do individual households and stuff as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know Growing Places Indie already does it with
Mhm.
their Snaps program, um, but you could broaden it to like other communities as well.
Yeah. And exactly. And if the restaurant says we don't need this anymore, we don't need as much as we grew, I mean, you can just sell that produce right to the local markets.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, it'll just help reduce food waste, which is key.
Yeah, it's another idea of looking at surplus. Just looking at it from a different perspective could save a lot of food.
Yeah.
That's very true. Shit. I had something on my mind. I just forgot what it was though. Hmm.
No worries. Happens to me all the time.
What was it? All right, maybe it'll come back. Maybe. I already said more than half of arable land or habitable land is used for agriculture. Put that fact out there again. Oh, what's the difference between hydroponic and aquaponic, and why are you focused on hydroponic?
Yeah. So hydroponic is essentially growing anything without soil. So hydroponic systems only use running water. Some of them use standstill water, but you can't really use them in mass production of food at all. So a lot of it's like running water through a pipe. The roots touch down and touch the water, and all the nutrients they need are in that water. Aquaponic is so in hydroponic, you have to pour in the nutrients into the water yourself and mix it, make sure the ratios are right. In aquaponic, it uses fish um, to produce their own waste, and then that waste is the nutrients that the plants need. So aquaponic allows you to also do fish farms. Like tilapia is a really commonly used fish in a lot of those systems. But the trick is with those is then you have to keep the fish alive. So either way, you have to maintain the system. There has to be some sort of external um, party watching and maintaining a balance
Mm.
because it's not a perfect ecosystem. But aquaponics just kind of adds another layer to where we can kind of grow fish and sell those as produce, whereas hydroponics is strictly for the plants.
Cool. And is your reason for like focusing more on hydroponics? It's easier for somebody to do in their own home.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it. The other piece is I'm just not. I don't know anything about fish. Not into it. Just I don't know. Just not for me. I guess. I've been around a few systems that have aquaponics. It's just not my thing. I think. I don't know. There's no real
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. I think it'd be really hard to like sell an in-home aquaponic system. It'd be really hard to educate
Yeah.
people on.
Yeah.
Oh, my last section, I didn't even like break it up, but we just went through and finished my current section of urban farming. We've talked about pretty much everything in the future section, but we can just like spitball things more. Like, we already talked about indoor farming, a little bit about decentralized distribution. I told you about the anaerobic digestion thing.
Yep.
Um, and if you're comfortable talking about it, my question would be to you as somebody in agriculture, how do you see the viability of marijuana or hemp in agriculture?
It's huge, and my cousin actually is like a manager up in Michigan for one of the big companies up there. I'm not sure exactly which one, but um, yeah, he explains like how much money they bring in, and it's unbelievable, like the margins for them. So me being completely open to marijuana being legalized and everything, like, I don't have anything against it. I think it's way better than alcohol. Like, I don't drink almost at all. I'd much rather smoke.
Yeah.
But I think there's a really interesting partnership that could develop between people who grow marijuana and then people who want to grow food urbanly. However, there's a division that's getting created right now between the two parties. Everybody that I talk to in like the hydroponic space, at least here in Indy, they always say like the marijuana guys, like the weed guys, it's always like a they thing, like they do this, it's this way for them, whereas we like to do it this way. So there's almost like a division. Whereas I think because of how much money marijuana brings in, there should be a partnership. Like the people who grow food should want to partner with them because they can do all the research. They have the money to get policies changed, to get law changed, to develop new and cheaper and faster ways to grow food. Um, Whereas people who grow food and grow lettuce and grow whatever else they might grow, their margins are way more thinner. You know, one bad year can really put them in debt, or they just don't have the money to spend on new research and development. They have to kind of focus on keeping the business alive and scaling up right now. Whereas the marijuana guys obviously have probably too much cash on what they know what to do with right now. So
Yeah. I know they are getting a little screwed over on taxes, but like still their top
yeah,
line's pretty good.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of investment going into it, um, and as it becomes more legal in more states, and eventually federal, I think we'll get there. But once it goes full across the country, then that industry is really going to boom.
No, I think Indiana's in a very unique situation with it. I don't remember his name, but I think he's um oh shoot. He might be a senator. I'm not 100% sure. I've been seeing him on TikTok, and I go and watch all of his videos. But he's in Indiana, and he's always talking about weed, always.
Hmm,
But his thing is that it's if you work under the assumption that it will become federally legal, which it most likely will,
yeah,
in Indiana, you're going to be drastically negatively impacted if you do not already have infrastructure in place
yeah,
when that happens because Michigan is legal, Illinois it's legal, Ohio I think has medical in some counties, and in Tennessee it's not legal, but they grow a lot of weed in Tennessee. Like they
yeah,
already have that infrastructure in place. So if it were to become federally legalized and Indiana didn't have production and distribution channels set up, we would only be retailers. Like we wouldn't have time to invest in the production of it, and then we would just be getting only a percentage of what all the states around us are making, and that would just put Indiana on a very bad spot compared to its neighbors.
yeah.
So
There's a the farm that I volunteer at now. I won't say too much about him,
yeah,
or, like where the location is, because he did grow marijuana for a while in his farms just to experiment, see if it was possible, and the results were insane. I mean, he grew it. I mean, full plants, really strong buds, like whatever strain he wanted, essentially. The only reason he couldn't keep going is because the neighbors started saying it smelled, and eventually
yeah.
kept going.
Oops.
I remember I talked to him, and he was like, "Yeah, the second they legalize it in Indiana, like he's like, I'm gonna be a millionaire because no one else in the city has like nearly as much space to grow as I do. And all
Mhm.
I'd have to do is get registered by whatever governmental body would take that over." And he's like, immediately I can just start churning out, and I'd be the only local supplier. So yeah, he's a smart guy, and there's definitely going to be a lot of room for supply because there's going to be a massive demand immediately for it.
Mhm. And it's a really like it's a decent companion crop as well. It brings in a lot of fertile pollinators, and it's a pretty resilient crop. It does require a lot of nitrogen to grow, but otherwise, like it's a
Yeah,
perfect crop to just like put a row in next to your tomatoes, and
yep,
your yield is going to be really high on it.
yep,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I mean, it can pay for the tomatoes, the
yeah,
cost of them. It just, yeah,
yeah.
I think there should be more of a partnership, and that's something I'll try and kind of work on as everything becomes legal. And with my cousin, I've talked to him about it, and he agrees. But yeah, I mean, those marijuana guys are raking in money right now, and when that starts happening, greed kind of takes over. I don't think they really care about any partnerships right now. So,
Yeah. I think that is probably where a lot of the division comes from. Like, if you're growing weed, you don't really want to grow anything else because
uh,
it's not going to be as profitable.
yeah,
But maybe that's somewhere where we put regulations in. Like, not every single farm can be like a strict weed farm. Like, you gotta have some joint ventures.
Exactly, yeah, that'd be
Um,
smart.
yeah. I like the hemp as well. I think we're gonna see a lot of clothing getting made out of hemp soon,
Mhm.
and, there's people even like, have you seen the 3D printed houses?
Oh, with the concrete, like, piece that, like,
Mhm,
moves? Yeah, yeah, I've seen, like,
mhm.
some short videos of it.
Well, apparently you can do that with hemp too. Like, you can
Oh,
I don't know how it works, this is way above my head engineering-wise, but, like, you can 3D print hemp houses. It's
huh,
I do know people, like, they make cardboard and stuff out of it because you can make paper, anything you can make out of trees, you can make out of hemp.
right.
It's kinda like the new bamboo, in a sense. Uh, it's weird. I worked, the first guy I interviewed on here, I did a little work for him, it's called Nature's Stash, but he did, hemp-derived THC products and sold them and everything.
Okay,
It's a weird market because, like, he did start off growing it and then making his own, like, doing everything vertically integrated. But then at some point, it was just like he was losing so much. He still doesn't make money, but, like, he was losing so much money, having to do it all in-house and stuff. So, like, just has to, um the way that Purdue Extension has, like, teamed up, I think, with the USDA is,
yeah,
like, if you're producing hemp, um, you have to, like, put it into a pot, like, send it to market, and then you can get whatever product you want from that. But, like,
okay,
to have everything vertically integrated, it's really hard. So, like, you can say you're Indiana grown, but, like, it's likely that, like, the hemp is actually grown somewhere else that you're, like, getting it from. I don't know.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah,
Something else that they could do, to better that market to, like, retain some of that margin within that business.
yeah, there's definitely space there.
Yeah. Alright. I got all these, just random topics now if we wanna talk about anything.
Yeah, I saw it down there.
I'm getting a little talked out, but I'll definitely talk about a couple things. Hmm, you talked about Elon a little bit. Um, I'm definitely not as big of a fan as I used to be with what he says nowadays, but, like, he's somebody that you can't, like, not pay attention to because
Yeah,
so many people
definitely.
are impacted by what he says. But the thing that is really messing me up right now, he is such an advocate for freedom of speech, and that's why he's bought Twitter,
Right.
but now you have to pay to have freedom of speech. How it I don't get that.
Yeah, I think when I first heard it, I thought the same thing, and then I thought about, like, he's getting so much backlash for, like, allowing all these people that might have hate speech coming on the site, and then he's also his goal was to reduce the amount of bots that are on the site.
Mm,
So I think this is might be his first attempt at a solution of stopping some of that. Like, if you're just trying to put bots on the site, you'll have to keep buying subscriptions, which no one will want to do, to pay money for that. And then on top of that, it might slow some of the hate speech down because the subscription gives him a little bit of power to be like, okay, well, now I'm going to raise prices, and some of these people will start to get offline. So
yeah,
to have Twitter, like, you're going to have Twitter only, kind of like Facebook. Like, you're not just going to have it to have it to just say
mhm.
hateful things. You're going to have it to stay in touch with family and more important matters. But
Yeah, I think he's trying to turn it into more like the WeChat,
right, yeah,
where people just, like, live on there and everything. Like, I do get it from a business perspective, but, like, philosophy and, like, politically, you can't say you're a freedom of speech company and then charge people $8 to do it. Like,
he
he
may
needs
also
to.
he may also like take the subscription away. He may just be a thing because he knows advertisers are going to leave as more hate speech gets on the site, and he may hope
Mhm,
it may long term plan may be to get rid of the subscription. I have no idea, but just looking at it from a business idea, I mean, he knows he's about to lose a ton of money from advertisers, so he's got to find a way to keep the company alive, I guess, for a while. But
yeah.
yeah, it's a weird time.
I think it's crazy that the company was even valued that high. And I think it is more insane that after they found out that, like, there were all those bots on there and that the valuation of the company that was incorrect, they made
Mm,
him buy it for the price that he, like,
yeah,
had, I guess, previously agreed to. But, like, he previously agreed to a deal that had a whole bunch of variables that weren't accounted for. Like, I guess bad business by him, but I don't
yeah.
know.
At the end of the day, he's got enough money to make a couple. not great decisions, but he'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I think he only invested like a portion of that 44. Like he got a lot of it from like other places as well. Like there's no that
Yeah,
didn't all come out of his pocket.
yeah,
He's still rich.
he'll be fine.
I I applied to work at have you heard of his company Boxable? I don't know if it's his company, but he has stake in it,
I've
I
heard of
guess.
it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
I'm more
I don't know
interested
too
in
much about it either.
the Boring Company is my favorite one that he has. That's the one I'm more interested.
Well,
That's
I
why
should
I
watch
hit
that more.
yeah, I hit the one he just does random stuff, which is I mean, honestly, if I didn't do hydroponics, that's the type of company I would wanna do, where it's just like, if this month I'm feeling like building a flamethrower and the next month I feel like digging tunnels, like, I think
Yeah.
that's just cool that he just has something where he can just let his creativity kinda just go,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
mhm.
I wonder how much of that's creativity and how much of it is his ego in some points. I
Yeah,
wonder. Like,
I think it's definitely both.
uh,
But I would
um,
like the flamethrower when I think he was on Rogan talking about the flamethrower,
yeah.
and he's like, "Yeah, it's a horrible idea. Like, I told people they shouldn't buy one." I think he was just
And it
proving to people that, like, he can always sell something.
uh,
'Cause there's no good in that. Like, there's no
no.
reason.
Yeah, and then, like, Joe Rogan asked, like, "Well, how many did you sell?" He goes, "It sold out in minutes."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we talked about that in my finance class this week. We've been talking about Elon and, we've been talking about stocks. Um,
Mhm.
my degree is really weird because, like, we have poets, we have people that have taken econ, and anywhere in between, so it's really hard for the professor, so he uses, like, stuff that we're all keen to.
Yeah.
But in like talking about stock prices, he was like, "Do you think Tesla's stock price changed because Elon went on Joe Rogan and lit it up?" Like, well, it actually did, but his point was saying
Yeah.
like it didn't actually impact it, but like in the short term, it did. Like
Right.
people really watched and listened to that.
Yeah.
And so, okay. Anything else about Elon you want to talk about? Anything cool?
Uh, I'm trying to not really not anything that's standing out. I mean,
No, you're good.
I think he's a net good for the world. That's how I look at a lot of those people that are famous. If it's a net positive or a net negative, the amount that they do. I think overall, I mean, he makes mistakes, but I think he's a net positive. I think he's doing enough good that
Yeah,
yeah, it makes up for his subscription.
yeah. I think it is important to look at those people like that too, because like they say there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire, and I agree mostly with that. But then you have to like same as like the artist discussion, like when an artist does something like not good, like there's a
Yeah,
way to separate between the artist and the art, and like if that art is doing something that's helping, like in business is an art in a sense.
yeah,
Um, like you are correct. Elon Musk does do a lot of good, but he's odd too.
yeah. But I mean, you got to have the oddness and like his. You got to have his ego too to be successful in business. Like you got to be able to be. You got to be out of the box, and you got to be able to confident in what you're saying. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's
Yeah,
almost like you just gotta blindly fire shots, and if one hits, you gotta be like, "Yeah, I was aiming. I knew exactly where I was aiming." Like,
no.
so yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think the boxable thing of his is really cool. So it's like small modular, off the grid homes.
Oh,
It's
that's what that one
those.
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
But yeah, I wanted to work there so bad because I
Yeah,
who can't sell that? That's so easy to sell. But,
yeah,
I think that's gonna be huge, especially with our generation. Like you say that we don't have, like, the ability to purchase houses and be that first time home buyer. Shout out Joe Biden. Let's get that first time home buyer act passed. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think that's going to be really big with our generation, and I think that is probably the best thing that Elon does is he looks at the younger people and what they're going to need in the future, so that business will continue to grow. It's a good strategy.
yeah.
Um, Look out a couple more. Um, Odd topic, and like I just want to ask you first before I say anything. What do you think about the idea of suburbs or suburbia?
Um, I I get why we have them. I just, I mean, I would hate to live in them. I mean, I grew up in essentially the suburbs of Indianapolis. Like, I was still in Indianapolis, but the city's not big enough to have the all of the county be a city. It's not Chicago, but yeah, I mean, it's it's so boring. The suburbs for me at least, because you don't really get nature other than like parks. But for me, like nature is more of like let's go to the mountains, let's go backpacking, let's go camp,
Yeah.
rock climb, like stuff like that is more of like enjoyable. Whereas going to a park really doesn't do much for me other than like I like to run in a park. But the suburbs, yeah, it's not a city, so it's not as fun. It's not like you can't go downtown and have a good time. It's just a weird medium that is not for me. It's
Yeah.
kinda like for me, it's like it's part of, like, that 9 to 5 life, like, you buy a nice home, have a nice family, go to work 9 to 5, come home,
It's a
do chores.
scary life.
Yeah, it's not a life that I would necessarily want. I'd rather live, like, in a van, a really nice van, and just travel around and do work,
Okay.
but, yeah, I'm not a big fan of suburbs. I don't know where you stand on them, but
Oh no, I'm definitely the same. I think
yeah,
they're the scariest thing in the state. Like,
yeah,
uh, they're so weird because everybody is. It's kind of like cult mindset within a suburb. It really is. Like
no, that's a
everybody
good way.
knows everybody. And
Yeah, it's
it's
very weird
everything's so
too.
political.
Yeah, and here in Indianapolis, there's Carmel, Westfield, Noblesville is growing all to the north, and each one is like a rival of each other. It's very
Hey, don't
odd.
don't forget about Zionsville now. Come on.
Zionsville too, yeah. I don't think about them too much. I'm thinking in terms because I played tennis growing up. I'm thinking of like the schools that we played against, but
You're from
um,
Lawrence, no?
North
Or
Central.
North Central? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's a weird competition between all the places, and each one has its strengths and weaknesses, but they're all the same in reality.
Oh yeah. It's I for me being in Zionsville, like our biggest rival was always Carmel because they're just right across Michigan Road. But
Yep.
it's the difference is like the people are so similar, but like the difference in
Yeah.
culture is so different. It is
Yeah.
odd. I sold mattresses for a long time, and a lot of people from Carmel would come in because ours would be like a little bit cheaper than the stores in Carmel, and like a lot of these people it was their first time moving to Indiana, and I like never heard a negative thing about Carmel. So like I always had to be the bearer of bad news about that to them, like tell them what people thought about their city. I guess. Mm.
Yeah.
It's not a bad place, but they have way too many roundabouts.
I hate the place. I'm not a fan of Carmel at all. I got
It's a
into
hundred.
yeah, I got my one and only car crash was in Carmel, and
Oof.
the lady slammed on her brakes. I was looking to change lanes, just horrible timing right after a stoplight, and she got out the car and was just, I mean, like cussed me up and down. And like some other dude came over and like made sure I was all right, but she was going crazy. And I remember I got out the car. She came over to me. By the time my parents got to me, she was yelling at me more. My parents showed up, and she's like, "You are like, I know you're not from Carmel. Like, you're so like, don't be here." Like, she's like basically telling me to get lost. Like, I shouldn't be
Yeah,
in Carmel. And I was like, "All right, woman, let's calm
yeah.
down." So,
That's why suburbs are scary to me. Like people, like inherently, like they get bigger egos because like you have this piece of land that you own, and like you have your kids and your school that you go to, and that is
yep,
the only things you care about in life. And
yep,
like you just forget about the world around you. You get yourself in this own little bubble, and like you lose perspective of reality in my mind in the suburb. Like they're not real. They're like these little utopias that are cults. I don't like them.
yeah. I'm
They're
not.
um the suburb. Oh, another little thing I like to talk about with suburbs. The research that I've done in the past and like how I've understood like the development of suburbs and like why they happened is like Standard Oil and Rockefeller like had a big input or impact on like where roads were built and things, which then
Mm,
dictated where cities were built. Um, so like again, there's just another example of like one person or a couple of people in one industry just making all the decisions for people.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of that butterfly effect. Probably they didn't even think about suburbs when they were making that choice.
No, they didn't. But then it just happened. Then they're not here to say it was wrong anymore. But, the I'd say the probably third or fourth most thing I hate about suburbs is the grass lawns. I know people love cutting their lawns and things, but like grass lawns aren't natural at all. Like it's
Mhm.
especially in Indiana, we're a prairie, you're supposed to have tall grass
Right.
and wetlands. Like everything is fake. But it's whatever. All right. Think of one more. One more. I had one picked out. I forget which one it was. I'm gonna talk about this one just super quick. Um, because I've never said it on here, and I think it's super important for people to know that there's a difference between the words efficiency and productivity. Oftentimes, people like use the word efficiency when they're really meaning productivity. In my mind, efficiency is just like using sustainable productivity. Um, but like productivity makes more. There's more output, but you're not using your resources as well.
Yeah. Yeah, when I think of them, I think of sports. There's a lot of people that are productive in sports. Everyone works hard.
Mhm.
There's only a few people that are efficient, and those are usually the LeBron James, Steph Currys. Those are the people that
Mhm.
you recognize. Yeah.
What was the last one I wanted to talk about? Oh, you're not in school anymore, so I don't know if you like you hear about it or anything. Maybe you did even before graduating, but like, have you heard anything about the SEC's changes that they're going to be making to financial statements in regards to carbon accounting?
Mm-mm. I have not. I saw that on the list, and I just hadn't got
Yeah.
to it.
You
I
should
haven't
look it
seen
up.
it.
It's really fascinating. So starting next year, the SEC is requiring all publicly traded companies to disclose their like sustainability statements, basically, and start doing carbon accounting. Um, but I was talking to my not accounting, but finance professor, and he said his wife is going in. She's a doctor or something, and is now in charge of like their sustainability or something at the hospital, and like was asking him about the new changes they're gonna make, but like he doesn't even know. Like all this stuff's brand new.
Huh.
Um, but like you're gonna see a lot of differences in how financial statements and stuff are read soon. But because companies are gonna have to like claim responsibility over their emission practices and stuff. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I think I'm gonna do a lot of like covering of those financial statements on here once those come out. Just like
Yeah.
looking at companies and like looking at their stuff. I think it'll be good content and I'll enjoy doing it. It'll be fun.
Hmm. So it's how much carbon they produce then, like annually or monthly or whatever they decide.
There were 3 different things. I'm not 100% sure what they were, but I think it's like emissions, and then you can also account for like your credits, which people already do, but it's going to be like a new SEC rule that like you have to put this on your
Hmm.
financial statements at the end of the fiscal year. I think it's really cool.
I think it'll be good, but I'm just worried about. That's why I asked, like, what exactly the definition is, because I think companies are going to try and find loopholes, which I'm sure they will, and they'll be fixed. But yeah, it'd just be interesting to see how truthful it really is, and if
Oh,
there's
it
punishment.
won't
Yeah,
be.
yeah, and if
It
there's
won't
punishment.
be very truthful at the beginning for sure, because you already have like environmental like ratings and stuff, and like Exxon Mobil has like the highest environment rating. It's like no, they don't. Like that's a lie.
Way.
But like it just depends on what you're counting.
Yeah,
Um, but what I do think it'll do, it's gonna force people to like not force people to look at it, but it'll force that information to be brought to light. So people that do care about it, that want to invest in sustainable companies, will invest otherwhere, or if they feel so fit. Like it'll be how I make my investment decisions. If
yeah,
I'm being honest. But,
yeah. It'll definitely change the market a little bit. There'll also be new like ETFs and stuff probably for people too to just mass invest in good companies.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I've been in the stock market since I was 18.
Yeah,
But now that I've like taken classes on stuff, like it's like a ritual every day. I gotta like research and stuff. It's fun. It is.
it's definitely
Griffin, I appreciate you coming on here, man. It was great. Anything else you'd like to speak out, get off your chest while you're here?
fun. Not really. Invest more money in ag tech, please.
No, that's cool,
But
man. I appreciate it, and I always wish you the best of luck in that. If you ever have a question or anything about ag that you think I'd be able to help you out with, I would more than happily help you out with that.
yeah, we'll definitely stay
I'll
in contact for sure. Thanks for having me on,
uh,
man.
yeah, I'll definitely come climbing with you when I'm back home, man. I'll hit you up.
For sure. Let's go.
Right.
All right,
And
JP.
thanks, man.
Yeah,
I'll
for
text you
sure.
when this is out.
All right, appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode. And please like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed this video or if you didn't as well. I really enjoyed my conversation with Griffin. It was nice to catch back up with him and see what he's been up to. I'll keep you guys updated on his website when it's back up and running because I plan on getting something of my own. Thank you.